August in the National Football League. If you've ever been down on the field during a late summer exhibition game, you know the air is completely thick with a very specific kind of desperation. Up in the stands, sure, the fans might be casually watching a lopsided 27-7 blowout, treating it like a glorified practice, just a warm-up before the real football starts in September. But down on the turf, looking into the eyes of the guys wearing numbers in the 80s and 90s, you realize pretty quickly that for them, there is absolutely no such thing as a meaningless snap. We're talking about livelihoods, signing bonuses, and lifelong dreams literally hanging by a thread on every single dropback. Today, we're diving deep into a devastating, cascading sequence of events that hit the Houston Texans during their clash with the Los Angeles Chargers. We're going to break down how one single, agonizing moment completely shredded a coaching staff's carefully laid plans and how it exposed the terrifying, razor-thin fragility of an NFL quarterback room.
So set the scene. The clock is bleeding out. The first half is, for all intents and purposes, entirely over. Most guys on the field are already mentally in the locker room, thinking about grabbing a Gatorade and getting off their feet to talk halftime adjustments. The situation is 3rd and 14, with exactly 2 seconds remaining in the second quarter. Now, in almost any regular season scenario, the head coach doesn't even hesitate. You call for a simple, safe kneel down. You take the snap, you kill the final 2 seconds, and you walk into the tunnel to fight another quarter without risking your personnel. But preseason operates in a completely different universe, with a completely different set of rules. When you have a young, fringe roster player under center who is desperately fighting just to secure his employment, taking a knee isn't an option. You take the snap, you try to put something, anything, positive on tape that forces the general manager to keep you around. And that's exactly where we find third-string quarterback Graham Mertz. Mertz, a young guy trying to carve out a career, steps into this specific play carrying an absolute mountain of pressure. He's not just out there to hand the ball off to a running back. He's out there to prove to the coaching staff that he legitimately belongs in the National Football League. The entire plan for this game was built around giving him heavy, sustained repetitions. The front office needed to see how he handled the intense pressure of commanding a live NFL offense against a hostile defense. Every single time he dropped back, it was a high-stakes, live-fire audition. Section 1.
2 seconds left.
Section 2. The key moment.
To really grasp how this escalated into a full-blown sideline crisis, we have to look at the timeline of the quarterback rotation. It's a delicate ecosystem. First, pregame. CJ Stroud, the franchise cornerstone, is rolled out. He doesn't even dress. Obviously, you protect your superstar, your golden goose, at all costs in August. Then, the first quarter kicks off. Davis Mills, the primary experienced backup, gets the start. He takes his predetermined, scripted reps, runs the offense smoothly, and then safely exits the game exactly as planned. His night is officially over. Put him in a baseball cap. Then we hit the second quarter, and the keys are handed to Graham Mertz. And honestly, the plan is executing flawlessly. Mertz is getting his tape, the coaches are getting their evaluation. Everything is going perfectly right up until we hit that 2-second mark. 2 seconds left on the clock. It's a completely broken play on 3rd and long. The pocket suddenly collapses around him. Instinct instantly takes over, and instead of throwing it away or just safely going down, Mertz tries to make magic happen. He fights for extra yards. And in one fraction of a second, the entire domino setup that the coaching staff had perfectly arranged comes crashing down in the worst possible way.
The sheer, visceral reality of this play is hard to watch if you understand what's on the line. Mertz scrambles, desperate to keep the play alive, but as he's taken to the turf, his body contorts in this incredibly awkward, unnatural way. Instantly, literally before the referee's whistle even fully echoes across the stadium, Mertz reaches down and aggressively grabs his right knee. If you spent any time around the game of football, you know the agonizing, stomach-dropping dread of that specific motion. A player instantly grabbing a joint usually means they felt a pop. But it's his immediate reaction right after that truly tells the whole devastating story. Mertz rips his helmet off and slams it violently against the turf. That isn't just a guy who got a little banged up. That is a moment of pure, unfiltered, agonizing realization. The sound of that hard plastic hitting the grass is the sound of a young athlete realizing his entire season, and potentially his immediate future in the league, might have just evaporated in a totally meaningless exhibition game. The physical pain is one thing, but the psychological torture of knowing a massive career opportunity just vanished? You could read it all over his body language.
We actually have verified insight into what the atmosphere was like down on the field right when it happened. Reporter Aaron Wilson from KPRC2 was tracking it in real time and noted that Mertz, quote, appears to be in pain and frustrated. That perfectly captures the grim reality of the situation. Now, Mertz did eventually manage to get up and walk off the field under his own power, albeit with a very noticeable limp. And, sometimes when a guy walks off, fans in the stands let out a huge sigh of relief. But inside an NFL organization, not a chance. A slow, agonizing walk to the blue medical tent holding a knee carries an incredibly heavy weight. And while Mertz was making that awful trek to the sideline, the true panic among the Houston coaching staff was only just starting to bubble up. They weren't just looking at an injured young player, they were suddenly staring down the barrel of a massive, gaping hole in their active game day roster for the entire second half.
Section 3. A depleted depth chart. Okay, let's talk about the strict, unforgiving math of NFL roster construction. A team brings a 90-man roster to a preseason game. You pan a camera across the sidelines, and it's just this massive sea of massive humans, shoulder pads and helmets. From the outside, it looks like a professional organization must have a completely endless supply of contingency plans for every possible scenario. But the reality is, you only have so many guys whose brain actually holds the offensive playbook, who know how to call the protection schemes at the line of scrimmage, and who actually possess the physical mechanics to take a snap from the center. Which brings us to the most terrifying number in football, right here, 0. That is exactly how many available backup quarterbacks the Houston Texans had left on their sideline the moment Graham Mertz went into that medical tent. 0. Think about the gravity of that for a second. You are a professional, billion-dollar football team, playing in the middle of a nationally televised game. You still have 2 entire quarters, an entire half of football left to play against the Chargers, and you literally do not have a single designated dressed player left whose actual job title is to throw a football. The depth chart wasn't just wearing thin, it was completely unequivocally wiped out.
Jacob Barzilla from Sleeper hit the nail perfectly on the head regarding the absolute sheer panic unfolding on the headsets. He reported, quote, "The Texans currently do not have a 4th quarterback if Graham Mertz is dealing with an injury that keeps him out of the second half. It would either be Davis Mills or Wildcat the rest of the way." This confirms exactly how quickly a standard, albeit lopsided 27-7 preseason loss instantly mutated into a legitimate roster emergency. The entire vibe on the sideline shifts. The coaching staff absolutely does not care about the scoreboard anymore. They are in pure survival mode. The offensive coordinator is frantically trying to figure out how they are going to physically run the very next play from scrimmage without turning the game into a complete disorganized circus.
Section 4. Emergency protocols.
When an entire position group is decimated like this, in the blink of an eye, a team has to break the glass and hit the extreme emergency protocols. Now, these are things coaches might lightly sketch out on a whiteboard during OTAs, but you pray you never, ever have to use them in an actual game, especially not in August, when health is the only thing that truly matters. Let's really look at the stark contrast between the plan and the reality here. The intended plan was beautifully simple. Get heavy, critical evaluation reps for developmental talent like Graham Mertz, while keeping your crucial veteran players bubble-wrapped and safe on the bench. But the grim reality? The reality forced the coaching staff to walk over to Davis Mills, their primary veteran backup who thought his night was completely finished, and tell him to strap his helmet back on, warm up his shoulder, and get back out there. And this is a massive risk. You are now taking the only viable, experienced safety net you have for CJ Stroud, and you are throwing him back onto the field to take unnecessary hits behind a second or third string offensive line in a game that doesn't count. If Mills takes a bad sack and gets hurt there, the franchise is in absolute shambles.
And let's say Davis Mills couldn't go back in. Maybe he had already cooled down too much, or the coaches refused to risk him. What's the alternative? The alternative is staggering. We are talking about resorting to the Wildcat formation for an entire half of NFL football. For those who might not know, the Wildcat is an offensive scheme where you bypass the quarterback entirely and snap the ball directly to a running back or a wide receiver. Sure, some teams mix it in for a tricky red zone play here and there, but running an entire half of an NFL game out of it? That's not a strategy. That is a sheer, unadulterated desperation measure. It means decades of complex offensive playbook evolution are just tossed straight into the garbage because you literally don't have a guy who can throw a 10-yard out route. It reminds you of that crazy situation a few years ago when the Denver Broncos had to start a practice squad receiver at quarterback due to league protocols. It completely exposes the illusion of NFL depth. One twisted knee, and a professional offense is suddenly forced to play playground sandlot football just to survive until the clock had 0. Thankfully for Houston's immediate sanity, Davis Mills was able to step back onto the field and somewhat stabilize the offense so they could physically finish the game. But make no mistake, the atmosphere inside the locker room was incredibly grim. The immediate facts coming out pointed to unconfirmed fears of an ACL injury for Graham Mertz. Now, while the exact final severity always remains unconfirmed until the MRI machine does its job, just the whisper of that 3-letter acronym, ACL, hangs over an NFL locker room like a suffocating dark cloud. Tearing an ACL in August is a profoundly cruel twist of fate. It means your season is entirely over before the regular season even officially kicks off. It's a devastating blow, demanding anywhere from 9 to 12 months of grueling, lonely rehabilitation just to get back to the physical baseline you were at yesterday. For a young, unproven player trying to fight for a spot in this league, the timing literally could not be more disastrous. Section 5. The bigger picture.
To really zoom out here, we have to understand that the NFL operates as a deeply interconnected ecosystem. An injury to the 51st man on the roster ripples out and immediately affects the employment, the strategy, and the workload of the other 52 guys. When you suddenly lose a load-bearing pillar of your depth chart, the entire structural integrity of the team heading into September gets compromised. The cascading consequences for the Texans are immediate and severe. First off, all that crucial evaluation data they needed on a young talent completely halted. They lose a full year of development. Secondly, the front office, led by General Manager Nick Caserio, is instantly forced to pivot and scramble for short-term solutions. Instead of just evaluating the guys in the building, they are now burning up the phones, scouring the waiver wire, calling veteran free agents who are sitting on their couches, and potentially having to spend precious salary cap space they definitely wanted to roll over. Third, the coaching staff's entire game plan for the rest of the preseason has to be completely torn up and rewritten. Davis Mills' workload changes, the practice reps change, the drill schedules change. And finally, it just highlights a brutal truth that every NFL general manager loses sleep over. Absolute roster fragility is suddenly exposed for everyone to see.
All of this naturally builds to the most critical, tension-filled question currently hanging over the entire city of Houston. A question that should genuinely terrify Texans fans. Who actually protects the franchise if CJ Stroud goes down? Look, CJ Stroud is the absolute engine of this organization. He is a bona fide superstar who completely shifted the gravity of the AFC and turned a rebuilding franchise into legitimate Super Bowl contenders overnight. Every single ounce of their success hinges entirely on his health. But football is a violent game. Starters miss time. We saw it last year across the league. Backup quarterbacks are the most important players on the team right up until the moment they have to play. If Mertz is gone for the year, Davis Mills is essentially the singular lone shield standing between a healthy Stroud and a completely derailed, catastrophic season. If Stroud tweaks an ankle in week 4 and Mills has to go in, there's now a massive void right behind him. That is the reality of the NFL. A seemingly random injury to a third-string player during a sweltering, meaningless August exhibition means the Houston Texans are suddenly operating without a reliable safety net at the single most important position in professional sports. The Houston front office now has a massive, urgent crisis to solve, and the clock is ticking incredibly fast before week 1 arrives. So I want to hear from you. How do you think the Texans should fix this emergency in the quarterback room? Should they be aggressive and trade a late-round draft pick for an experienced, reliable veteran, or should they just scour the practice squads around the league hoping to strike gold on hidden talent? Let me know your exact thoughts down in the comments below. Look, if you want to stay ahead of the curve on every major storyline, deep dive tactical shift, and critical injury fallout across the league, you are in the exact right place. Your channel is NFL Nexus. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video to support the breakdown, comment your opinion on Houston's next move, and consider supporting the channel directly by becoming a member. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I will see you next time as we continue to unpack the harsh, incredible realities of the NFL.